Welcome back, and we're finishing up our talk with Jack Lowery. And Jack, we've covered several things about your career, about going to law school, growing up in North Carolina, but we haven't mentioned anything about your family. We said you're a father and a grandfather, and I know that's one of the things you're most proud of. So tell us a little bit about your kids.
Well, I am proud of my children. I have a daughter named Wendy Lynn Lowery Dalby. She lives in Nashville. She has finished her degree at Vanderbilt. She has a doctor's degree, but not a medical doctor, but a doctor's degree in computer science. She lives in Nashville, has 2 children. One of them just turned 15. It's a girl, and she's having the normal things you have to do with that, and she has a son. And then I have a son whose name is J.D. Lowery, or Jack Daniel Lowery, and quite frankly, when I named him, they threatened to throw me out of church because some of the people said, "You've named your son after a bottle of liquor," but I did. That's not what I did. His grandfather was named Daniel, and so he's a lawyer here in Lebanon too, and I'm proud of him. He's married to Suzanne. And they have 3 children, and 2 girls and a boy. So yes, I'm very proud of my children and my grandchildren, and they come to my house, the grandchildren do, and they do anything they want to. So
well, that's what granddaddies do. What do they, just out of curiosity, what do they call you?
Big Daddy. I don't know where that name came from.
They don't call you Jack?
No.
Don't call you by any initials that we're not going to discuss?
It's called Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
Yeah.
Okay. And but you said your daughter is a doctor, and Dr. Dalby in computer science, right?
Yes, she is.
And then J.D., your son, is in practice with you, but you opened up your law office when?
In 1962.
And over the years, for a number of years, you were there by yourself, but
yes,
other attorneys have worked with you over time, and anybody that stands out or you want to mention? Or?
Yeah, I had when I first started in practice, Bill Baird and Buck Hagan were people that I knew, and Bill Baird was the lieutenant governor, and in the courtroom he was just about as mean as you could ever be, and he taught me, because if I was on the other side of a lawsuit, he would just really try to destroy me, and that taught me some strengths. You don't give any quarter in the courtroom, and so he was an interesting person to work with. I knew a lot of lawyers back then, Vincent Case and Neil A.G., whose son practices law now, and I had a lot of people that, as I said, helped me. Bill was a mentor. Buck Hagan helped me. Some of the other lawyers, when I first started, Broadus McNabb and some of those names, they were really good people. It was a lot of fun to practice law in Lebanon. The rules were different, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed coming to work. I still love to practice law, and I'm still doing it. In fact, I have a couple of murder cases going at this time, one in Nashville and one in Murfreesboro. So we're still doing it, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it very much.
Any idea over your career how many murder cases you've had?
You know, I don't know. I never took the time to try to count, but I used to do murder cases in this area, of course, Macon County, Smith County, all of the 5, Jackson County, Sumner County, Rutherford County, all of the counties right here. Plus I did federal practice, which they don't do murder cases in federal court very much, but it was a lot of drugs and guns and those kind of cases in federal court. But I've handled a lot of murder cases in my career. I've been doing this a long time, and it seemed for a long time those kind of cases would migrate my way, I guess, and that's why I stayed a criminal lawyer instead of branching out in other areas.
Now, and you've handled cases that have involved the death penalty.
Handled a couple of cases that involved the death penalty, yes, I have, yes.
And people may not realize this, but not just anyone can handle a death penalty case. You have to be what's called death penalty certified.
Yes, death qualified, they say, death penalty qualified. And quite frankly, I don't want to I don't want to handle any more death penalty cases. It's not because there's so much paperwork and so much other things, hoops that you have to jump through when you're handling a death penalty case. It's just not any, I shouldn't say fun, but it's just a tedious type thing that you know that it's going under appeal, and they got these other people they send in to sort of try to guide the thing, and you don't get the feeling that you're trying to get the guy off. You just, the objective is to just keep him from getting the death penalty. I never practiced law like that. When I took on a case, I thought my objective was to see if I could get him acquitted.
Right.
And that's not what you do in a death penalty case. They don't want you to do that. They just want you to focus on saving his life and getting him not having the death penalty. And that's kind of difficult for me to. I've handled a couple of them, and
over the years you've handled quite a few high-profile cases, but one that's been in the news recently was the one involving Lawrence McKinney.
Yes.
And for those who may be familiar with the name, or maybe not the name but the facts, Mr. McKinney served some time in the federal penitentiary and
State penitentiary. Lawrence McKinney was a black man who was convicted in Memphis, Tennessee, and ended up getting a sentence of like 115 years. He was charged with rape, and he was convicted, and he served 31 years, and he's got the number of days, but he served over 31 years, at which time it was discovered through DNA that his DNA did not match, and he was released. And a state judge down there in the district attorney's office in Shelby County entered an order saying that he was exonerated, and it was stated in the order, had we had this information at the time, we would never have indicted or tried Lawrence McKinney. It was written in the order.
much less convicted.
Much
Much less convicted.
less convicted. Would never have tried him.
Right.
And so now he comes out after having served 31 years plus, and he comes to me and asking about compensation, and of course he was due compensation given the facts. And so I started a procedure of seeking to file a claim with the claims board in the state of Tennessee to have him compensated. And I can tell you this, it was a long road. We started, and one of the ways that you have to go is you have to go before the parole board and get him exonerated. And we went before the parole board, and by this time I had associated David Rabin with me, who's a very able lawyer out of Nashville, and the two of us was working on this case. And we went before the parole board, and we were treated just terrible. I mean, it's like they had a meeting before we got there. They didn't pay any attention to the DNA evidence, and they voted unanimously to deny us exoneration. And so we went back and forth twice with that, and then waited for a new governor and went back before Haslam. And this time we were able to get Governor Haslam to see what was going on, and his legal staff. And they finally come back and made a ruling over and above the parole board, which the governor has the right to do. The governor exonerated Mr. McKinney, and then we filed a claim with the Board of Claims, and they awarded him $1 million. And the Board of Claims said at the time that was the statutory maximum they could award him, and they said at the time if they could have awarded him more, they would have awarded him more. So he ended up, after, I think it took us a long time, but after that period of time, I don't think it took us a long time, it did take us a long time, but after that, Mr. McKinney ended up with an award of $1 million. He lives over here in Lebanon. He's a member of the Emmanuel Baptist Church and is doing quite well.
Right. Well, that's a case that stands out, but it also stands out for the idea that you see somebody that's been abused by the system. And even after they've been exonerated by the trial judge and the district attorney, they're still being abused by the system. And that may go back to your experiences as a young person growing up in North Carolina. Did you experience any sort of discrimination when you were young?
Yes, I would have to say so. prefer sometimes not to get into that, but the truth of the matter is, I grew up in an Indian culture, and back at that time, you have people now who want to brag about being part Indian. Back at that time, it was not. When I grew up, it was not something you bragged about.
Right.
It was not that accepted. So yes, I've gone through some times where prejudicial times and this type of thing, and some prejudice that causes you to be sensitive to some of those things. I think it sort of leaves an impression in your life, and I think it did mine. But I try not to let that be at the forefront of things now.
It doesn't define who you are,
Right.
but it may
Right.
adjust your perspective.
Yeah, it makes you sympathetic to some of the things when you see these things happen. Yeah.
Right. And looking back on your career, it's been a relatively short one in your 59 years that you've been around. But looking back on your career, is there any particular case, or we covered a lot of stuff this today with the discussion, that you look back and you say, that's something that stands out in my mind about somebody I represented, a case I had, or maybe somebody that when I dabbled in politics, something I wanted to accomplish.
Well, I'll tell you just a quick story. I was defending over in Charleston County a gentleman who had shot the sheriff. And
A fellow who shot the actual sheriff.
Yeah, he shot the sheriff over in Charleston.
But he didn't shoot the deputy.
He didn't shoot the deputy. He didn't kill the sheriff, but he shot him. And I was representing him, and we were in trial. And Tommy Thompson, as you well know, is the district attorney. I'll tell this quick story because it's kind of funny. And we had impaneled a jury, and the courtroom was full, all the way up to the top tier, and people in standing room in the courtroom. And so Tommy, in an opening statement to the jury, he gets up and says some very nice things about me. He says something about, I've known Jack Lowery for a long time. The defendant has got a very good defense lawyer. And he said this. He said, I used to ride my bicycle down here to the courthouse and watch Jack Lowery try murder cases. Well, I'm sitting there listening to that. When I got up, I got a chance to say yes. I appreciate all the nice things that General Thompson said about me, but he was the only 28-year-old boy in the 8th grade still riding his bicycle down here to the courthouse. So that's one of the funny instances we had in court. And then, of course, I had a murder case up in Jackson County that was quite funny, but I mean, the way it turned out and everything. But I don't know if we've got time to go into that.
We've got time, but those are the kinds of stories. One thing I want to share, Dave Allen.
Yes.
Who was in private practice here for years, but was also a prosecutor. I remember being at one of our bar association meetings one time, and you were at one table, Dave was at the other, and I think I was at your table. And somebody spoke up and said, y'all aren't talking to each other. We couldn't talk because Dave Allen was so loud and dominating the room.
Yeah.
And I've used this line. You said, we can't talk because of Dave Allen. He learned to whisper in a sawmill.
Yeah, he grew up whispering in a sawmill, yeah.
But stories like that, other things that you've seen happen in court that maybe you wouldn't see today because it is a different environment.
Well, it was a lot of fun to try this case. I remember having a murder case in Jackson County, and the way things turn out, the different attitudes that juries would have in Jackson County versus the attitudes they might have in Wilson County or Smith County, they were all different. And Jackson County, if you jumped on the sheriff and you jumped on law enforcement in Jackson County, the jury really liked it. They enjoyed doing it.
They liked seeing the lawyer.
Oh yeah, they
beat up on the police.
Oh yeah, beat up on the law. That was one of the things in Jackson County at the time. And so I was trying this murder case, and they'd offered me 20 years, and I said no, we'll just have to try it. So we proceeded to trial, and the Judge Bradshaw was a judge. And what had happened, my man had been fishing and came back in with another guy, and he stopped at his mother-in-law's house in Jackson County. His mother-in-law and all of his brother-in-laws, his wife's brothers, they were all there drinking in this house. So they said, okay, let's go over to my house. So they go over to his house, and all of them come over there, and they're still drinking. Well, the proof showed that they're drinking in this house, my client's house, and this dog comes in from down the street. And he'd been fighting with another dog.
A dog?
A dog, yeah. And his dog had been in a fight with another dog and lost, and he's all bloody. So my man is drunk, and he gets up and he starts saying, "Who cut my dog? Who hurt my dog?" Well, he's drunk, and he had his shotgun in his hand, and he pulls off a shot in his living room and blows a hole in the side of the wall, but it goes right side of his brother-in-law's head. Almost hits him. So he gets mad and jumps up and says, "You almost killed me." And they get in this big row, so my man says, "Well, get out of my house." And so he runs them out of his house, and they get out in the front yard and say, "Wait a minute, we bought the beer, I'm going back to get the beer." That was a mistake. When he walked back in, my man had got a .30-06 rifle and took half his head off.
Killed him.
Yeah. And then the other brother come in, and he almost beat him to death with the gun. Well, this is sort of the facts.
Okay.
I'll go very quickly. We get into the trial, and I start bringing up the dog to the witnesses. Which one of y'all cut this man's dog? We did not. Of course, you know how you do that. You didn't have any proof. So after a while, the judge calls me up to the bench along with the DA and says, "What are you doing putting that dog in the middle of this trial?" And I said, "Judge, that's got something to do with it." Well, long story short, we went through the trial, and I got to argue in my final argument, you don't cut a man's dog in Jackson County. You just don't do that, you know. And the jury went out and came back, and they acquitted him of first degree, acquitted him of second degree, acquitted him of voluntary manslaughter, and hung 8-4 on that in involuntary manslaughter.
So he walked on that.
He walked.
Wow.
On account of that dog.
And you never had to call the dog to testify?
No, I didn't call the dog to testify, but you saw things happen like that.
But as a trial lawyer, one of your big things is being able to know your jury pool and know your environment. You've tried cases outside of the judicial district here and outside of Davidson County.
Oh, yes.
And how do you figure out, some attorneys have that gift that they can size up a jury pool and...
Well, I don't know if it's so much getting them on a jury. You need to watch the jury after you put them in a box. If you're talking to the jury or you're examining a witness and the jury's looking down on the floor, you might as well sit down. You know, they're not following you. And that's where I think a lot of lawyers make mistakes, is they fail to communicate constantly with the jury. You got to watch them, see where their eyes are, see if they like what you're doing, and if they don't, quit doing it and do something else. And I think that's one of the keys that I always did. I always watched the jury very closely and see what they're saying, and you know, and don't argue too long. They don't like long-winded speeches and this type of thing. That, you know, put it all in a can and do it quickly and get out. And but watch their eyes.
Respect their time.
Yep. And you can talk all that. You know, I've seen lawyers go in and talk way above their heads. You know, I like to talk about milking a cow, or,
cutting a man's dog.
Right. A goat getting his head caught in a fence. You know, these are things that people in our area can relate to.
Right.
It's what makes the difference, I think.
Well, in getting into your career, did you ever look at it and say, boy, you said about school. I taught school for 1.5 years and hated it. Wasn't going to do it anymore. You ever had a time in the practice of law that you've looked at and said, this is just a struggle, I wish I was...
Never.
Never.
I love practicing law. I love doing what I do. I've never regretted or looked back at that. That's the nice thing about, that's why I'm still doing it. I mean, I guess I could retire, I guess I could, but I don't want to. I like the challenge of the courtroom. I don't like it now as well as I used to, because we used to really, it was like doing a theatrical production in a trial. You got to really act, and you got to do some things, and the jury would be sitting on the edge of their seats. Now you try a case, and it's because all the rules, you look over there and the jury's about to go to sleep. So it's a different atmosphere than it used to be. I love the way it used to be versus what it is now, because they don't want you to yell in the courtroom. Well, yelling in the courtroom, my God. How are you going to try a case without yelling in the courtroom, you know? How are you going to cross-examine a witness without going after him, you know? And so, that's not proper to do that. Well, excuse me, I started to use a word, but no, that's just not the way we used to do it. We've actually had fights in the courtroom before.
Fights in the courtroom?
Physical fight.
Between the lawyers?
Yes, between the lawyers. Happened right over here, right off the square at this courthouse.
You talking about the one where the parking lot was?
Yes, we had
the old courthouse.
Yes, we did.
Do you care to tell us about who?
Well, I can tell you who it was before. It was Bill Baird, Buck Hagan, myself, and that was pretty much it. Judge Mitchell was the Baxter Key. Did I say Baxter Key?
You did.
Baxter Key, Bill Baird, Buck Hagan, and myself. And the judge called us all up and said, "You lawyers have shown yourself. I'm going to put every one of you in jail. When this trial is over, I'm going to put you in jail." And it was John Mitchell, and I thought, if you put Bill Baird in jail, I don't mind going with him. he was the lieutenant governor. I didn't mind that. So anyway, long story short, the judge was Cookeville. When the trial was over, he went back to Cookeville and he called Perry Johnson, the clerk, and he said, "Mr. Johnson, I fully intended to put those lawyers in jail. It slipped my mind. You remind me the next time I'm down there, I'm going to follow through on that." Well, he came back and he never said anything else about it, and we didn't mention it anymore, so it kind of went by the wayside. But we had a physical altercation in the courtroom.
Do you recall what it was about? What prompted the fight?
Somebody called, somebody at the counsel table, somebody was testifying, and I won't call the name because it's the defendant's involved, and the defendant said to me, "He's a lying SOB." Well, Bill Baird heard him, and Bill Baird said, "That's my friend, and you called him a lying SOB." And so the witness jumps up then from there, "I'll get him," and then Bill Baird gets him, and then Baxter Key gets involved. That's how it got started. And
so it sounded like a free-for-all.
It was a free-for-all. The officers came in and broke it out.
Was that a criminal case?
Yeah, it's a criminal case.
Okay. And maybe some things we don't need to go back to, but it sounds like it was theatrical.
It was theatrical, and it was a lot of fun. I don't want to call names now because there's still families probably involved here, but yes, it was. I've tried cases up in this new courtroom where there was standing room only. I'm talking about the aisles were full. I could tell you the name of the case, but it's a family situation again. But I've tried cases up there where people would take off work to come and watch a trial. That's unheard of now.
Yeah.
They won't do that. They're not. The trials are not that interested anymore. They're not as interested as they used to be.
And back then, you didn't have as many distractions as well. It was big news.
Was big news. Yeah, you'd have people that would just take off from their job and come and watch a trial, and it was a production. You got to really open up and try it, and the judges would let you try it. They'd let you do it.
Well, one thing I have heard, getting back to when you first came to Lebanon, was you started off as a police officer. You used to direct traffic around the square and mark the tires with the chalk.
No, I never did do that.
You weren't the chalk marker?
No, I wasn't a chalk marker. I was a traffic policeman. I worked the traffic on the square in the afternoon. But yeah, I never did those are ticket things, but I never did that part of it.
But I've heard tell that you were a blue-eyed, dark-complected young man with jet black hair, tall, thin, handsome, and the girls from Lebanon High School used to drive around the square just to gawk at you.
I don't remember any of that. Oh, but it turned out to be a nice experience for me because I felt every day that I was in law school, I felt I was making my life better.
Yes, sir.
I felt I could feel it. I could feel that I was doing something that was going to make my life better. And it was a good feeling, as opposed to teaching school. I didn't think I was making my life better then. So.
Well, in the time that we have left, and we just have a few minutes, looking back on your career and your life experiences and perspective and perception about things, if you were to talk to some young person, whether they were getting into a legal career or not, what would you say are some of the important characteristics that a person needs to look to be successful?
Get qualified in what you decide you want to do, and dedicate yourself to it, because a lot of You know, a lot of people now, and I see it happen in the legal profession, lawyers think they can be successful if they go have a 2-hour martini or if they play golf twice a week. And that's not the way it works. If you, and it never didn't work that way with me. I mean, I worked intensely at my law practice, and if I got a call in the middle of the night, which I did back then a lot, if there was some case developed, a murder case developed in the middle of the night, and I got a call on it, I got up and out of bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would go to the jail and I'd interview the defendant to keep him from talking too much or something. So it's that kind of dedication, I think, that you have to attribute to almost anything you decide you're going to do. Is you know, pick out something that you like and want to do, but then, you know, do it. You're going to have to do it. You can't, and the sky is not going to open up and it's going to fall on you. It didn't with me. So that's the short-term advice that I could give somebody.
And along the way, you've mentioned some folks that you've encountered in business and in practice in law that you saw as mentors. What do you look for? What would a person need to look for in that?
Somebody with experience that'll take the time to talk to you and give you some guidance. That's the thing that I always respected about Bill Baird. I keep talking about him. He would absolutely, he would sit down and we'd have conversations. But if I was on the other side from him in a lawsuit, he would literally try to destroy me in the courtroom. And at first I didn't understand it, but then I later learned it was he was teaching me something like practicing criminal law or in the courtroom. It's like going in a boxing ring. You don't pull any punches. You know, if they punch you, you punch back. And that was a message that he was trying, I think, to get across to me, that you just, you know, that's not a place to settle things is in the courtroom. If you're going to settle it in the hall. Right. If you're in the courtroom, you're in a fight. You're in a legal fight. That's what it was.
Well, you mentioned him. You mentioned Don Chambers, your business partner with LoJack, that you found someone that knew the construction industry.
Right.
And I'm assuming that you hadn't had any prior involvement in the construction business.
Except representing defendants in that kind of business.
Right.
But I hadn't, but you're right. And you need to hook up with qualified people. If you have a company, you need to hire qualified people. You can't run everything. That's called, you know, you can't do it.
Right.
You just need to find good people, honest people if you can find them, and put them in place and hold them to, you know, hold them to the line, expect them to do what they're supposed to do. So you start a business, I think putting people into a structure is the most beneficial thing you can do, as opposed to trying to encompass locations. You got to build from the inside, and you build it with people. And Don, I speak of Don Chambers, he had a talent. He had a very good talent of picking people, qualified people in the industry we were in. I mean, he was a good manager. He's a very good manager.
All right. Well, Jack, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us and sharing your story. And I'm sure this will be one of our most watched episodes. And tell you what, we'll come back in another 30 or 40 years and do it again.
Yeah, by that time I should be 67 years old, right? Thank you very much.
Jack, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.